My name is Dorothy. I'm 28 years old and I'm sitting at my kitchen table with an ice pack pressed against my swollen cheek. 3 hours ago, my father slapped me at breakfast for refusing to sign fraudulent documents that would steal my dead mother's estate. But he doesn't know I've been gathering evidence of his crimes for months. Tonight, I'm hosting a dinner party with some very special guests he won't recognize until it's too late. He thinks he owns me, but tonight I'm serving justice as the main course. Before we dive into my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. If you believe that standing up for justice takes incredible courage, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more powerful stories of triumph over family betrayal. Trust me, what happens at this dinner party will leave you speechless, so stick around to see how I turn the tables on my corrupt father in the most unexpected way. The morning started like any other in the Hartwell mansion with my father Vernon sitting at the head of our mahogany dining table, his presence dominating the room like a dark cloud. I watched him spread legal documents across the polished surface while our housekeeper Maria nervously served his black coffee. Vernon didn't look up as I entered, just pushed the papers toward my usual seat with one manicured finger. "Sign these, Dorothy. It's time you contributed to this family instead of living off my generosity." I picked up the documents, my hand steady despite the rage building in my chest. They were transfer deeds for my mother's properties, the beach house she'd inherited from her parents, the cabin where we spent summers before she died, all to be signed over to shell companies I knew were fronts for his money laundering operations. I'm not signing anything," I said quietly, setting the papers down. Vernon's head snapped up, his gray eyes narrowing to slits. "Excuse me?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "You heard me, Dad. These properties belong to Mom, and her will left them to me. You have no right to them." That's when he stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "No right, I have every right. I built this empire, I provide for this family, and you will do as you're told." His face was turning that familiar shade of purple, the one I'd learned to fear as a child. "Mom would be disgusted by what you've become." I said, my voice stronger now. "She'd hate knowing you turned her family's legacy into dirty money." The slap came so fast I didn't have time to dodge. His palm connected with my cheek with a crack that echoed through the dining room, the force spinning me sideways. Maria gasped from the doorway, dropping a plate that shattered on the marble floor. "Never speak about your mother again," Vernon hissed, adjusting his gold cufflinks as if he hadn't just assaulted his own daughter. "Sign the papers by dinner, or you'll find yourself on the street with nothing. I've tolerated your defiance long enough." He stormed out, leaving me holding my burning cheek, but instead of tears, I felt something else rising in me: determination. What Vernon didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this moment for 8 long months. Ever since my stepmother Belinda had moved into our house just 6 months after Mom's death, I'd suspected something was wrong. Mom had been healthy, vibrant, only 52 years old when she supposedly had a sudden heart attack. The funeral was rushed, the cremation immediate, and Dad had Belinda's things moved in before Mom's ashes were even scattered. That's when I started digging. Late nights in his study while he was traveling, photographing documents, copying files, following paper trails that led to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. I discovered shell companies layered upon shell companies, tax evasion schemes that would make the IRS salivate, and insurance policies on Mom that paid out millions just days after her death. The most damning evidence came from his own computer, carelessly left unlocked one evening after too much whiskey. Email exchanges with Dr. Morrison about adjusting medical records, payments to the funeral director for expedited services, and messages to his lawyer about changing Mom's will. But I needed more than digital evidence. I needed confessions, witnesses, ironclad proof that would put him away forever. That's how I met Special Agent Jennifer Walker. I'd walked into the FBI field office with a flash drive full of evidence, terrified they'd turn me away, or worse, alert my father. Instead, Agent Walker had listened for 3 hours, her expression growing more serious with each document I showed her. "We've been watching your father for years," she'd told me. but we've never been able to get close enough. You could be the key to bringing down his entire network. Now rubbing my bruised cheek, I pulled out my phone and dialed the number I'd memorized but never saved. Walker, came the crisp voice. It's Dorothy Hartwell. He hit me today and I'm done waiting. I want to move forward with the dinner plan tonight. There was a pause. Then, are you sure? Once we start this, there's no going back. I thought about Mom's laugh, her gentle hands braiding my hair the way she'd stood up to Dad when he got too aggressive with his business associates. I'm sure. Can your team be ready by 7? We'll be there. Remember, act natural, follow the script we discussed. And Dorothy, be careful. Desperate men do desperate things. I spent the next hour in my room concealing the bruise with makeup and preparing for the performance of my life. I texted Dad's assistant confirming the dinner party for potential investors he'd been courting. Then I called our chef ordering an elaborate 5-course meal. To anyone watching, I was simply playing the dutiful daughter organizing another business dinner for Dad's empire. In reality, I was setting a trap that would bring down everything he'd built on lies and blood. I made one more call, this one to my brother Carson. Hey, sis. He answered, sounding distracted. Dad wants you at dinner tonight. 7 sharp, and wear something nice. Carson laughed, that hollow sound he'd perfected since joining Dad's business. Another dog and pony show for investors. Sure, I'll be there. Hey, I heard about this morning. You really should just sign the papers. It's easier that way. My stomach turned. My own brother, the boy who used to protect me from bullies, had become one of Dad's puppets. I'll think about it, I lied. See you tonight. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows through my bedroom window, I sat at my vanity staring at the woman in the mirror. The bruise was already darkening despite the concealer, a purple testament to how far my father would go to maintain control. But tonight, control would slip through his fingers like water. Tonight, 3 FBI agents would sit at his table eating his food, listening to him brag about crimes he thought were secret. Tonight, the empire built on my mother's death would finally crumble. I opened my jewelry box and pulled out Mom's pearl necklace, the one thing of hers Dad hadn't been able to sell or steal. This is for you, Mom, I whispered, clasping it around my neck. Justice is finally coming. The knock on my bedroom door came at exactly 2:30, just as I'd finished hiding the USB drives containing backup copies of all my evidence. I recognized the syrupy voice before I even opened the door. Dorothy, darling, may I come in? Belinda stood there in her designer dress and stilettos, her perfectly manicured nails clutching a tissue she obviously wasn't using. I heard about this morning's unpleasantness. Your father can be so harsh sometimes. I stepped aside, letting her slither into my room like the snake she was. She immediately went to my window, gazing out at the manicured gardens below. You know, Dorothy, I consider you like my own daughter. It pains me to see this conflict between you and Vernon. Save it, Belinda, I said, sitting on my bed. We both know you couldn't care less about me. She turned, her fake concern morphing into something colder. You're right. Let's drop the pretense. I know you've been snooping around Vernon's office. Maria tells me everything you know. Late nights, going through files, taking pictures of documents. What exactly are you looking for? My blood chilled, but I kept my expression neutral. I don't know what you're talking about. Belinda laughed, a tinkling sound like breaking glass. Please, I have security footage of you entering his office at 3 in the morning last Tuesday. The only reason Vernon doesn't know is because I intercepted it. You should be thanking me. What do you want? I asked, already knowing the answer. She sat beside me on the bed, close enough that I could smell her expensive perfume, the same one she'd started wearing the day after Mom's funeral. I want those properties you're being so stubborn about. Sign them over and I'll keep your little midnight adventures our secret. Otherwise, well, Vernon has such a temper. And after this morning's display, who knows what he might do if he found out his own daughter was betraying him. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. You know your mother was stubborn too, always asking questions, always suspicious. She even hired a private investigator, did you know that? Of course, he had an unfortunate accident before he could report his findings. Car crashes can be so unpredictable. My hands clenched into fists, but I forced myself to remain calm. You're admitting you killed her. Belinda stood smoothing her dress. I'm not admitting anything. I'm just saying that being curious can be dangerous in this family. Your mother found that out when she discovered Vernon's real books and threatened to go to the authorities. Such a shame about her heart condition. Who knew it was so serious? She headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Dorothy, I helped Vernon create your mother's new will. The real one is ashes just like her. Sign the papers or you might find yourself with a sudden illness too. The Hartwell women seem prone to them. She left me shaking with rage and fear, but also with something else: confirmation. Belinda had just admitted to destroying evidence and threatening Mom. I pulled out my phone, checking that the recording app had captured everything. Agent Walker would want to hear this immediately. But before I could call, another knock interrupted. This time it was Carson, and he didn't wait for permission to enter. We need to talk, he said, closing the door behind him. My brother looked terrible, dark circles under his eyes, his usually perfect hair disheveled. For a moment he looked like the boy who used to read me bedtime stories. Carson, are you okay? I started to ask, but he cut me off. Shut up and listen. Dad called me after this morning. He's done with you, Dorothy. Completely done. Carson pulled out a folder from his jacket, his hands trembling slightly. He had me prepare these weeks ago, hoping he wouldn't need them. Psychiatric evaluation forms signed by Dr. Morrison. According to these, you've been showing signs of paranoid delusion, making false accusations about family members exhibiting violent tendencies. There's enough here to have you committed for a minimum 90-day observation period. My mouth went dry. That's the same doctor who signed Mom's death certificate. Carson's face darkened. Don't start with that again. Mom had a heart attack, end of story. The point is, Dad's giving you one last chance. Sign the property transfers, or tomorrow morning, you'll wake up in Shady Pines mental health facility. And before you think about running, he's already alerted security. You're not leaving this house without his permission. Carson, please. I stood reaching for him. You're my brother. How can you be part of this? He stepped back, avoiding my touch. Part of this, I'm going to run this empire someday. Dad promised me. CEO of Hartwell Industries, legitimate and respected. All I have to do is help him clean up the mess Mom left behind. Those properties are the last loose ends. I stared at him, this stranger wearing my brother's face. What happened to you? You used to protect me from him. Something flickered in his eyes. Maybe regret, maybe just annoyance. I grew up. I learned that in this family you're either at the table or on the menu. Dad's offering you a seat at the table one last time. Take it or tomorrow, you'll be just another crazy relative we don't talk about. He turned to leave, then stopped. For what it's worth, I am sorry about him hitting you. That was excessive. But you brought it on yourself with all this resistance. Just sign the papers, Dorothy. It's not worth destroying your life over some properties you'll never use anyway. After he left, I sat in stunned silence. My own brother was ready to have me institutionalized. But then I remembered something he'd said: I wasn't allowed to leave the house. That meant they expected me to be here for dinner. Perfect. I quickly texted Agent Walker about the psychiatric threat, and Belinda's confession, then prepared for the next act in this deadly play. At 4 o'clock, just as I was reviewing the seating arrangements for dinner, my Aunt Judith appeared at my door. Mom's younger sister rarely visited anymore, driven away by Dad's hostility and Belinda's territorial behavior. Aunt Judy, I said, shocked. What are you doing here? She slipped inside, looking nervously over her shoulder. I had to come. I can't live with this anymore. She was carrying a manila envelope clutched against her chest like a life preserver. Dorothy, I've done something terrible. Your father has been paying me $50,000 a month to stay quiet about your mother's death. I've been taking it because I have nothing else. No savings, no job. But I can't anymore. Not after what I heard he did to you this morning. She thrust the envelope at me with shaking hands. This is your mother's real autopsy report. I stole it from the medical examiner's office before Vernon could destroy it. I've been hiding it for 2 years, too scared to do anything with it. I opened the envelope with trembling fingers, scanning the official document inside. There it was in black and white. Cause of death: acute poisoning consistent with ethylene glycol ingestion. Manner of death: homicide. My mother had been poisoned with antifreeze, not a heart attack. Judy, this is evidence of murder. We have to take this to the police immediately. No! She grabbed my arm. Vernon has connections everywhere. The police chief, the district attorney, judges. That's why I kept quiet. But there's more. Your mother called me the night she died. She said she'd found evidence of Vernon's crimes and was going to the FBI the next morning. She was scared but determined. She said if anything happened to her, I should protect you. And I failed. I took his money and stayed quiet while he paraded that woman around in your mother's clothes. Tears were streaming down her face now. I'm so sorry, Dorothy. I was a coward. But maybe this can help you somehow. Maybe it's not too late for justice. I hugged her tightly, feeling her thin frame shake with sobs. It's not too late. I promise you, Aunt Judy. Tonight everything changes. Can you do one more thing for me? Leave now, go home, and don't answer your phone for anyone until tomorrow morning. Things are going to get very messy here, and I want you safe. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Your mother would be so proud of you. You have her courage. After she left, I added the autopsy report to my evidence cache. The final piece of the puzzle was in place. At 5:30, as I was getting dressed for dinner, our security chief, Roy, intercepted me in the hallway. Ms. Hartwell, he said, his bulk blocking my path. Your father asked me to ensure you remain in your room until dinner. I met his eyes steadily. I need to check on the dinner arrangements. Surely Dad wants his guests properly entertained. Roy considered this, then shook his head. You can do that by phone. Please return to your room. I started to argue but saw the futility. Roy was ex-military, loyal to Dad's money and built like a linebacker. Fine, but I'll need my laptop to review the catering orders. He escorted me back, standing guard outside my door. I could hear him talking on his radio, confirming my containment. Trapped, but not defeated, I used the time to prepare. I placed tiny recording devices in my jewelry, tested the panic button app Agent Walker had installed on my phone, and practiced my performance for the evening. I needed to appear broken, compliant, ready to sign anything. Let them think they'd won. In my mother's jewelry box, I found the silver bracelet she'd worn every day, the one with the tiny compass charm. She used to tell me it would always help me find my way home. Tonight, it would help me find my way to justice. At 6:45, Roy knocked on my door. Time for dinner, Ms. Hartwell. Your father expects you downstairs in 10 minutes. I took one last look in the mirror. Designer dress, perfect makeup, hiding the bruise, Mom's pearls at my throat. I looked like the dutiful daughter. Underneath, I was a warrior preparing for battle. The trap was set, the players in position. In 15 minutes, FBI agents would be sitting at my father's table, and by the end of the night, the Hartwell empire would be nothing but rubble. I opened the door and smiled at Roy. I'm ready. Let's not keep Father waiting. The dining room glowed with candlelight as I descended the stairs, each step measured and graceful despite my racing heart. Vernon stood by the bar in his best suit, the picture of a successful businessman, no trace of the monster who'd struck me that morning. Belinda hung on his arm in a revealing black dress, diamonds glittering at her throat, probably bought with my mother's life insurance money. Carson was already pouring himself a scotch, his third by the look of it. Ah, there's my beautiful daughter, Vernon said loudly, playing the devoted father for the arriving guests. Dorothy, come greet our visitors. The first to approach was a tall man with silver hair and kind eyes. "Michael Chen," he said, extending his hand. "Your father speaks highly of your business acumen." I recognized Agent Walker instantly, despite her masterful disguise, but kept my expression neutral. "Mr. Chen, a pleasure. Father mentioned you're in investment banking." Before he could answer, Vernon interrupted. "Michael here manages portfolios worth billions. He's interested in our expansion plans." The next introduction was Sophia Martinez, supposedly a high-powered attorney specializing in international tax law. Agent Rodriguez had transformed herself completely from her usual FBI power suits to an elegant cocktail dress that screamed expensive lawyer. "Ms. Hartwell," Sophia purred, "I understand you handle some of the family holdings. I'd love to discuss estate planning strategies." David Park, ostensibly a forensic accountant, was actually Agent Kim, whose specialty was financial crimes. His handshake was firm, his smile reassuring. "Your father tells me you have a head for numbers," David said pleasantly. "Perhaps we can discuss some creative accounting methods later." The double meaning wasn't lost on me. These agents were perfectly in character, ready to let my father hang himself with his own words. The real guests arrived next: Frank DiMaggio, a New Jersey developer with mob connections, and Donovan Sterling, a banker who specialized in helping wealthy clients hide their money. Both were longtime associates of Vernon's, part of his inner circle of corruption. "Shall we move to the dining room?" I suggested, gesturing toward the elaborately set table. As everyone found their seats, I noticed the strategic positioning. Agent Walker sat directly across from Vernon, while Agents Rodriguez and Kim flanked the criminals. I took my place at Vernon's right hand, the dutiful daughter, while Belinda preened at his left. Roy stood guard by the door, ever watchful, while our servers began bringing out the first course. "So, Michael?" Vernon began, already on his second martini. "Dorothy tells me you're interested in our offshore opportunities. We've developed quite an efficient system over the years." "I'm all ears," Agent Walker replied, leaning forward with apparent interest. "In my line of work, efficiency in moving assets is paramount." Vernon laughed, that booming sound that used to terrify me as a child. "Oh, we're very efficient. Tell him about our Cayman structure, Carson." My brother, emboldened by alcohol, launched into a detailed explanation of shell companies layered through multiple jurisdictions. "The beauty is," Carson slurred slightly, "each company owns the next, creating a chain so complex that even if someone tried to trace the money, they'd need years to unravel it. We move millions monthly, and the IRS hasn't caught a whiff." "Fascinating," Sophia interjected smoothly. "And I assume you have ways to bring that money back into the country. The new regulations have made that challenging for many of my clients." Belinda, not to be outdone, leaned forward, giving Michael Chen an ample view of her cleavage. "Vernon's brilliant at that. We use art purchases, inflated invoices, even charity donations. The Hartwell Foundation has built schools in countries that barely exist on maps, if you know what I mean." She winked, pleased with herself for revealing their money laundering through fake charities. I forced myself to laugh along, playing my part, while the hidden recorder in my bracelet captured every word. "Speaking of foundations," David Park said casually, cutting into his filet mignon, "I noticed some interesting insurance payouts in public records. Life insurance can be a wonderful tax shelter if structured correctly." Vernon's eyes lit up. Here was a man who understood his language. "Absolutely. In fact, my late wife's policies were structured beautifully. Multiple policies with different beneficiaries, all paying out to various trusts. The government got nothing, and the family preserved everything." He raised his glass in a mock toast. "To Elizabeth, still providing for us even after her unfortunate passing." I gripped my wineglass so hard I thought it might shatter. Beside me, Frank DiMaggio laughed coarsely. "You always were a smart bastard, Vernon. Remember when you asked me about that doctor, what was his name, Morrison? You said you needed someone discreet for a family matter." Vernon waved his hand dismissively. Poor Elizabeth had so many health issues toward the end. Dr. Morrison was invaluable in documenting everything properly for the insurance companies. My stomach turned as they discussed my mother's murder like a business transaction. This Morrison sounds useful, Agent Walker said thoughtfully. I have some elderly clients who might benefit from his services. Is he still practicing? Vernon nodded enthusiastically. Oh yes, Gerald Morrison is one of the best. Discreet professional and understands that sometimes medical records need to reflect the greater truth rather than petty details. He's helped several of our associates with similar situations. Donovan here used him just last year, didn't you? Donovan Sterling shifted uncomfortably. Vernon, perhaps we shouldn't discuss. But Vernon, drunk on wine and his own arrogance, waved him off. Nonsense, we're among friends here. Michael and his associates understand how business really works. Sometimes obstacles need to be removed for the greater good. Donovan's uncle was holding up a massive land deal refusing to sell. One visit from Dr. Morrison to adjust his medication, and suddenly, the old man was much more reasonable. Signed everything over before his unfortunate stroke. I excused myself to check on the next course, needing a moment to compose myself. In the kitchen, I sent a quick text to Agent Walker's backup team. They're confessing to multiple murders. Move closer. When I returned, the conversation had shifted to their current operations. The judge is getting nervous, Frank was saying. Ever since that reporter started sniffing around the construction permits, Kellerman wants double his usual fee. Vernon snorted. Judge Kellerman can be replaced. We have photos from his visits to that underground club. He'll stay in line or find himself on the front page. Blackmail, Sophia said admiringly. A classic tool. I assume you have similar insurance on all your associates? Belinda giggled now on her fourth glass of champagne. Vernon has dirt on half the city council, 3 judges, and the police commissioner. We even have video of the mayor at one of our special parties. Young girls, very young. He does whatever Vernon asks now. Agent Rodriguez's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but she maintained her character. Impressive. And I suppose these materials are stored securely. Multiple locations, Carson bragged. Safety deposit boxes, encrypted servers, even hard copies in our panic room. Dad learned from the best. Never put all your blackmail in one basket. The servers brought out the 3rd-course lobster thermidor that nobody was really eating anymore. The room had taken on the atmosphere of a confessional, with Vernon and his crew competing to impress the investors with their crimes. I watched it all unfold, marveling at how easily they damned themselves. Years of getting away with everything had made them careless, arrogant, sure of their invincibility. You know what I love about this business, Vernon said, gesturing expansively with his wine glass. It's all about family. Everything I've built, everything I've done, it's for my children, even when they're ungrateful. He looked directly at me, his eyes cold. Dorothy here gave me some trouble this morning about signing over some properties, but she's come around, haven't you, sweetheart? I forced a smile. Yes, Father. I understand now. Family comes first. He patted my hand condescendingly. That's my girl. You see, gentlemen and ladies, sometimes family members need firm guidance. Elizabeth never understood that. Always fighting me, always threatening to tear down what I built. But Dorothy's smarter than her mother. To family. Agent Walker raised his glass. And to those who understand that sometimes preservation requires pruning. Everyone drank, and I noticed Roy by the door growing increasingly agitated. He kept staring at Agent Walker, his hand moving unconsciously toward his concealed weapon. As the 4th course arrived, the conversation became even more explicit. Frank detailed his construction fraud, Donovan explained how he laundered money through real estate, and Vernon bragged about bribing FDA officials to approve dangerous drugs that made his pharmaceutical subsidiary millions. The beauty of America. Vernon said, now thoroughly drunk. is that everything's for sale. Judges, cops, politicians, even federal agents. I've bought them all at one time or another. Agent Kim leaned forward. Federal agents? That seems risky. Vernon laughed. Not if you know their price. Everyone has one. I once had an FBI agent on my payroll who kept me informed about investigations. Poor bastard ended up eating his gun when he grew a conscience. Officially ruled a suicide, of course. I saw the agents exchange quick glances. This was new information, a murdered federal agent. The stakes had just gotten even higher. Roy suddenly stepped forward from his post by the door. "Mr. Hartwell," he said urgently. "A word in private?" Vernon waved him off irritably. "Not now, Roy. Can't you see I'm entertaining?" Roy's face was grim as he moved closer, and I saw his hand slip inside his jacket where he kept his gun. The trap was set, but it might spring too early if Roy had figured out our guests' true identities. Roy's movement toward Vernon became more urgent as he leaned down to whisper in his employer's ear. I saw Vernon's expression shift from annoyance to confusion, but the alcohol had dulled his reactions. "That's impossible," Vernon said loudly, pushing Roy away. "I did my research on all of them. You're being paranoid." Roy straightened his face, a mask of professional concern. "Sir, I'm telling you, I've seen Michael Chen before. 3 years ago, the Castellano case. He was one of the agents who testified." The room temperature seemed to drop as everyone froze momentarily. Agent Walker maintained his composure perfectly, laughing smoothly. "I get that a lot. I apparently have one of those faces, though I'm flattered you think I look like federal agent material." Vernon studied Agent Walker more carefully now, his drunk mind trying to process this information. But Belinda, always eager to defend her meal ticket, interjected shrilly. "Oh, Roy, stop being such a buzzkill. You probably saw someone who looked similar on TV. Michael's been managing our overseas accounts for months now." The lie hung in the air, and I watched the agent subtly prepare for action. Rodriguez's hand moved closer to her purse. Kim shifted his weight to the balls of his feet, and Walker kept his eyes locked on Roy, who still had his hand near his weapon. "Months?" Donovan asked, his banker's instincts suddenly alert. "Vernon, you told me these were new contacts you were vetting tonight." The seeds of doubt were spreading, but I couldn't let this unravel yet. Not when we were so close. I stood abruptly, drawing everyone's attention. "I have an announcement," I said, my voice cutting through the tension. "Father's right. I have been ungrateful, and I want to fix that tonight." Vernon's suspicion melted into satisfaction. "Finally coming to your senses, are you?" I moved to the center of the room, reaching into my purse. Roy tensed but relaxed when I pulled out folded papers. "These aren't the property transfers," I said, unfolding them slowly. "This is something else. Something I've been hiding." I held up the document so everyone could see the official seal. "This is my mother's real autopsy report, the one that shows she was poisoned with antifreeze, the one that proves she was murdered." The room erupted. Vernon lurched to his feet, his face purple with rage. Belinda shrieked, knocking over her champagne. Carson dropped his glass and it shattered on the floor. Frank and Donovan both pushed back from the table, ready to run. "You lying witch!" Vernon roared, starting toward me, but Agent Walker was already moving his hand inside his jacket. "Nobody move, FBI, you're all under arrest." The transformation was instantaneous. Walker, Rodriguez, and Kim all produced badges and weapons in one fluid motion. The dining room doors burst open as backup agents flooded in, all wearing FBI tactical gear. Vernon's rage turned to shock, then back to fury as he realized the depth of my betrayal. "You set me up, my own daughter." He lunged at me despite the guns trained on him, his hands reaching for my throat. Agent Walker intercepted him, using Vernon's momentum to spin him face first into the wall. But the room exploded into chaos. Frank DiMaggio, true to his mob roots, pulled a pistol from his ankle holster. "Nobody is taking me alive," he shouted, swinging the weapon toward Agent Rodriguez. She fired first her shot, catching his shoulder and spinning him to the ground. Donovan tried to flee toward the French doors leading to the garden, but ran straight into more agents who'd been positioned outside. He fell to his knees, hands behind his head, sobbing about his children and how this wasn't supposed to happen. Carson remained frozen in his chair, staring at me with a mixture of disbelief and terror. "Dorothy, what have you done? What have you done to us?" Belinda made a dash for the stairs, her heels clicking frantically on the marble. Agent Kim caught her before she'd made it 3 steps, efficiently cuffing her, despite her attempts to claw at his face. "This is entrapment," she screamed. "Vernon, tell them about the senator. Tell them about our protection." But Vernon was beyond helping anyone. As Agent Walker secured his hands behind his back, my father's carefully constructed mask finally shattered completely. "You stupid girl!" He screamed at me, spittle flying from his lips. "I gave you everything. I built an empire for you and your worthless brother. And this is how you repay me, by destroying your own family." I stood my ground, the autopsy report still clutched in my hands. "You destroyed our family the night you poisoned Mom. Everything else was just the aftermath." His face contorted with rage and something else, perhaps the first flicker of fear I'd ever seen from him. "You can't prove anything. That report is fake. I have the real one, signed by the medical examiner himself. Actually," Agent Walker said, producing a digital recorder from his pocket, "we have everything we need. Your detailed confession about the insurance policies, the bribed officials, the money laundering operations. Oh, and that federal agent you mentioned who committed suicide. Agent Marcus Bennett was my partner. We've been waiting 20 years to prove you had him killed." Vernon's legs seemed to give out and only Walker's grip kept him upright. Around us, the other agents were efficiently processing the scene. Frank was being treated by paramedics while cuffed to a gurney. Donovan was already being led out in restraints, and Belinda's shrieks had faded to whimpers. Roy made one last desperate move. Seeing his employer defeated, he pulled his weapon and aimed it at me. "This is all your fault." But he'd barely cleared the holster when 3 agents tackled him simultaneously. The gun went off the bullet, embedding harmlessly in the ceiling as they wrestled him to the ground. "Clear the room," Agent Rodriguez commanded. "We need to process this as a crime scene." But Vernon wasn't done. As they started to lead him away, he turned back to me, his eyes burning with hatred. "You want the truth? Fine, yes. I killed your mother. She was going to destroy everything with her sanctimonious bleating about justice and legitimacy. She found the books, threatened to go to the feds. I couldn't let 40 years of work disappear because Elizabeth grew a conscience." Vernon, shut up," Belinda screamed from where she was being held, but the dam had broken. Vernon's need to hurt me overrode any remaining sense of self-preservation. It was so easy. Morrison gave me the antifreeze, told me how to mix it in her nightly brandy. She trusted me right until the end, even as I handed her the glass. Stupid woman, thought we were reconciling, thought I'd finally agreed to go legitimate. She died believing I loved her. The agents were recording everything, but I barely heard them anymore. All I could see was my father's twisted face as he revealed the monster he'd always been. "And you know what the best part was?" he continued, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "She knew at the end. Right before she lost consciousness, she looked at me and knew. The betrayal in her eyes was almost worth losing her income. Almost. But then Belinda helped me fix that problem with a new will, and everything worked out perfectly. Until you decided to be just like your mother, a self-righteous fool who chose strangers over family." "That's enough," Agent Walker said firmly, starting to drag Vernon toward the door. But Vernon had one more poison dart to throw. "Ask your Aunt Judith about the night your mother died. Ask her why she really stayed quiet. It wasn't just the money, Dorothy. She helped clean up the scene, helped us stage everything before calling 911. Your precious aunt is an accessory to murder." I felt my knees weaken but forced myself to stay standing. Agent Rodriguez appeared at my side, her hand steady on my elbow. "We'll verify everything he said. Right now, we need you to come with us to give a formal statement." As they led Vernon away, he started laughing, a horrible sound that echoed through the house. "You think you've won? I have lawyers who eat federal cases for breakfast. I'll be out on bail by morning, and then we'll see who's destroyed." But his laughter cut off abruptly as they forced him into the waiting FBI van. The dining room that had hosted so many corrupt deals, so many celebrations of ill-gotten gains, was now a crime scene tagged with evidence markers. The crystal glasses that had toasted my mother's death were bagged as evidence. The table where my father had plotted murders was being photographed from every angle. Carson finally found his voice as agents prepared to arrest him. "Dorothy, please. I didn't know about Mom. I swear I didn't know he killed her. I thought it was really a heart attack. Please, you have to believe me." I looked at my brother, this man who'd been ready to have me institutionalized just hours ago. "You knew enough, Carson. You knew about the money laundering, the bribes, the blackmail. You made your choice." He broke down completely as they cuffed him, sobbing like the little boy he'd once been. "I just wanted him to be proud of me. I just wanted to matter." Agent Walker returned after securing Vernon in the transport vehicle. "Ms. Hartwell, we need to get you somewhere safe. Your father has resources we haven't uncovered yet, and he's desperate enough to use them." I nodded numbly, then remembered something. The panic room. Carson mentioned evidence stored there. Blackmail materials on judges and politicians. Walker's eyes sharpened. "Can you show us?" I led them through the house I'd grown up in, past family portraits that now seemed like mockeries to Vernon's study. Behind a false panel was the entrance to his panic room, a fortified space where he'd hidden his darkest secrets. Inside, we found filing cabinets full of photographs, videos, financial records, and correspondence that implicated dozens of city officials in Vernon's web of corruption. There were also stacks of cash gold bars and multiple passports with Vernon's photo, but different names. "This is bigger than we imagined," Walker said, calling for additional agents. "We're going to need weeks to process all this." As we emerged from the panic room, I saw them loading Belinda into another van. She caught sight of me and screamed, "This is your fault. When Vernon gets out, you're dead. You hear me? Dead." But her threats felt hollow now. The empire was crumbling. By tomorrow, the news would break, and Vernon Hartwell would be exposed as the monster he truly was. My phone buzzed with a text from Aunt Judith. "I heard on the news. I'm so sorry, Dorothy. Everything Vernon said was lies. I was never there that night. I'll testify to whatever you need. Your mother would be so proud of you today." Whether it was true or just another lie in a family built on them, I chose to believe her. Sometimes faith is all we have left. As Agent Walker led me to a bureau car for protection and debriefing, I took one last look at the Hartwell mansion. Tomorrow, it would be seized as evidence, its contents cataloged and sold. The empire my father built on blood and betrayal would be reduced to line items in an FBI report. But tonight, my mother's spirit could finally rest. Justice had come to dinner, and it had been served cold. The FBI safe house was a modest apartment downtown, a far cry from the Hartwell mansion, but it felt more like home than that mausoleum ever had. Agent Walker sat across from me at a simple wooden table, digital recorders and legal pads between us, as I gave my formal statement. For 6 hours, I detailed everything, the months of investigation, the evidence I'd gathered, the threats and violence that had led to tonight's operation. Outside, the city was waking up to breaking news alerts about the arrests of prominent businessman Vernon Hartwell and his associates on charges ranging from murder to racketeering. "Your cooperation has been invaluable, Ms. Hartwell," Walker said as dawnlight filtered through the blinds. "With your evidence and tonight's confessions, we have enough to put your father away for multiple life sentences." I nodded, exhausted but oddly at peace. The weight I'd carried since discovering my mother's murder was finally lifting. "What happens now?" I asked. Walker's expression softened slightly. Now the legal system takes over. There will be trials, media attention, and probably more threats from your father's remaining associates. We'll keep you in protective custody until we're certain it's safe. The next weeks passed in a blur of grand jury testimonies, evidence reviews, and legal proceedings. The story exploded across national media. Daughter brings down father's criminal empire, and the Hartwell horror, a family's deadly secrets exposed. Every news cycle brought new revelations as the FBI used Vernon's records to arrest dozens of corrupt officials. Judge Kellerman was removed from the bench in handcuffs. The police commissioner resigned in disgrace. 3 city council members were indicted. The mayor fled the country but was arrested at the Mexican border. Vernon's criminal network built over decades collapsed in weeks. I testified at the trial facing my father for the last time, as I detailed finding evidence of my mother's murder. Vernon sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, his empire reduced to a number on his chest. When our eyes met, I saw nothing but hatred. His expensive lawyers tried everything, claiming entrapment, questioning my mental stability, even suggesting I'd fabricated evidence out of greed. But the FBI's recordings were damning. Vernon's own words bragging about murders and bribes played for a horrified jury. Dr. Morrison, faced with overwhelming evidence, made a plea deal and testified about providing the poison and falsifying medical records. Belinda tried to save herself by turning state's witness, revealing every detail of Vernon's operations. She testified about helping forge my mother's will, about the offshore accounts, about the murders disguised as accidents or suicides. Her testimony helped convict Vernon but earned her only a slightly reduced sentence. She would spend 30 years in federal prison, her designer clothes traded for standard issue, her diamonds replaced by handcuffs. Carson's trial was harder to watch. My brother, stripped of his bravado, looked young and lost as he faced 25 years for money laundering and conspiracy. He'd written me letter after letter from jail begging forgiveness, swearing he never knew about Mom's murder. I wanted to believe him, but trust was a luxury I could no longer afford. In the end, I testified truthfully about his involvement, neither embellishing nor minimizing. The jury would decide his fate. When Vernon was convicted on all charges, including first-degree murder, racketeering, money, laundering, tax evasion, bribery, and conspiracy, he didn't react. But when the judge sentenced him to life without parole plus 200 years, he finally broke. "You destroyed your family," he screamed at me as guards dragged him away. "You're no daughter of mine. Elizabeth would be ashamed of you." His words might have hurt once. Now they were just the desperate ravings of a man who'd lost everything. The media caught every moment, broadcasting his downfall to millions who'd followed the trial. The Hartwell name, once synonymous with power and success, now meant only corruption and murder. After the trials, I left the city, needing distance from the memories and the media attention. The FBI helped me relocate to a small coastal town in Oregon where nobody knew the Hartwell name. I bought a modest cottage near the beach with money from my mother's legitimate inheritance, the properties Vernon had tried so hard to steal. The sound of waves replaced the noise of the city, and slowly I began to heal. I started therapy with Dr. Sarah Chen, a specialist in family trauma who helped me process not just recent events, but a lifetime of living under Vernon's shadow. "You showed incredible courage," she told me during one session. "Many people would have taken the money and stayed silent. But I knew it wasn't courage that drove me. It was love for my mother and a desperate need for truth in a family built on lies." 6 months after the trials, I started the Elizabeth Hartwell Foundation with the assets seized from Vernon's criminal enterprise. The government had allowed me to direct some of the forfeiture funds toward victims' assistance, and I knew exactly what my mother would have wanted. The foundation provided legal aid to families dealing with domestic violence, helped witnesses in organized crime cases relocate safely, and offered counseling to those who'd lost loved ones to violence. It was a small way to transform blood money into something healing. My mother's name, tarnished by Vernon's crimes, slowly became associated with hope and justice instead. I also reconnected with Aunt Judith, who'd been telling the truth about that terrible night. Vernon's accusation had been one final attempt to poison my relationships, but Judith's testimony and phone records proved she'd been 3 hours away when Mom died. We met for coffee every Sunday, sharing memories of my mother and rebuilding the family connection Vernon had tried to destroy. "Your mother talked about leaving him," Judith told me one afternoon watching seagulls dive for fish. "She'd started planning gathering evidence just like you did. She was going to take you and Carson and disappear. Vernon must have found out somehow." The parallel wasn't lost on me. My mother and I had walked the same dangerous path, but I'd survived where she hadn't. A year after Vernon's conviction, I received an unexpected visitor. Lucas Mitchell, a local high school history teacher, knocked on my door with a casserole and an apologetic smile. "I know you probably get this a lot," he said, "but my class is doing a project on courage in the face of corruption. Your story has inspired so many people. I was wondering if you might consider speaking to them someday. No pressure, of course." I invited him in for coffee, and we talked for hours. Lucas had a gentle way about him, respectful of my boundaries, while genuinely interested in my work with the foundation. He didn't see me as the Hartwell heiress or the woman who'd brought down her father, but simply as Dorothy, his neighbor who liked to walk on the beach at sunset. Our friendship developed slowly, built on evening walks and shared meals, conversations about everything except my past. Lucas taught me to trust again, to believe that not every man carried hidden violence beneath a charming surface. When he finally kissed me a year later while watching the sunset from my deck, I didn't flinch or pull away. I kissed him back, feeling something I'd thought Vernon had killed: forever hope. We took things slowly, Lucas patient with my triggers and trauma responses. He held me through nightmares about that final dinner, celebrated with me when the last appeal of Vernon's conviction was denied, and stood by my side as I testified before Congress about the need for better witness protection laws. The foundation grew, helping hundreds of families escape situations like mine. I hired staff who understood trauma firsthand, survivors who transformed their pain into purpose. We opened offices in 3 cities, providing safe houses, legal aid, and counseling to those trapped in cycles of family violence and corruption. Every life we saved felt like a small victory over Vernon's legacy. I spoke at conferences about recognizing coercive control, about the courage it takes to stand up to powerful abusers, especially when they're family. My story became a cautionary tale, but also a beacon of hope that justice was possible even against the most entrenched corruption. Carson was released after serving 5 years, his sentence reduced for good behavior and cooperation with ongoing investigations. He wrote asking to meet, and after months of therapy to prepare, I agreed. We met at a neutral location, a park where families played and life felt normal. My brother looked older, humbled, the arrogance beaten out of him by federal prison. "I dream about Mom," he said quietly. "She tells me she forgives me, but I can't forgive myself. I helped him, maybe not with her death, but with everything else." I studied this stranger who shared my DNA, searching for the boy who'd once protected me. "You made choices, Carson. We both did. The difference is what we choose now." He nodded, tears sliding down weathered cheeks. "I'm going to testify in the civil cases, help the victims' families get compensation. It won't undo anything, but maybe it's a start." We didn't hug or promise to stay in touch. Too much damage lay between us. But I gave him information about therapists who specialized in family trauma and perpetrator rehabilitation. Everyone deserved a chance to heal, even those who'd helped cause the wounds. As I watched him walk away, I felt the last chain to my old life finally break. Carson would find his own path to redemption or wouldn't, but it was no longer my burden to carry. 5 years after that fateful dinner, I stood at my mother's grave with fresh roses and good news. The last appeal was denied, Mom. He'll never get out. And the foundation just helped its 1,000th family. You would have been so proud. I arranged the flowers, carefully reading the headstone Vernon had chosen with its lies about a loving wife and mother taken too soon. Next month, I'd replace it with something true, something that honored who she really was, a woman who'd tried to stand up to evil and paid the ultimate price. But her death hadn't been in vain. It had planted seeds of justice that bloomed in ways Vernon never imagined. Lucas proposed that evening, getting down on one knee at the same beach where I'd learned to trust again. He didn't offer me a massive diamond or promises of wealth and power. Instead, he offered partnership, respect, and a life built on truth rather than lies. I said yes, crying happy tears for the first time since before my mother's death. We married the following spring in a simple ceremony with Agent Walker, who'd become a friend, giving me away. My mother's sister Judith stood as my matron of honor, and the foundation staff filled the small chapel with joy and celebration. Life didn't become perfect. I still had nightmares, still flinched at sudden movements, still checked locks obsessively. But I also laughed freely, loved deeply, and lived without fear of the monster who'd once controlled my world. Vernon would die in prison, taking his hatred and corruption with him. But Elizabeth Hartwell's legacy lived on through every family, saved every survivor who found their voice, every child who escaped the cycle of violence. In choosing justice over blood, I'd lost a father but found myself. And in the end, that was the greatest victory of all. The trap I'd set at dinner had caught more than criminals. It had set me free. As I write this, 10 years later, my daughter Elizabeth plays in the garden Lucas and I planted together. She'll never know her grandfather, never feel the weight of the Hartwell name as a burden. Instead, she'll know her grandmother through the foundation that bears her name, through the stories of courage and conviction, through the knowledge that sometimes love means standing up to those who would destroy us. When she's old enough, I'll tell her about the dinner that changed everything, about how her mother chose justice over family loyalty. But for now, I watch her chase butterflies in the sunshine, free and unafraid, the way all children should be. Vernon thought he owned me, but that night at dinner, I served him the only thing he deserved: justice, cold and complete. And it was a meal I'll never regret preparing. What would you have done in my place? Could you have sat at that table watching your father confess to murdering your mother and held your composure long enough for justice to be served? Sometimes, the hardest battles we fight are against those who share our blood. But family isn't about DNA or last names. It's about love, truth, and protecting those who can't protect themselves. That's the lesson my mother taught me with her death, and it's one I'll carry forever. If you've made it this far in my story, you've witnessed how one decision to seek justice can topple an empire built on lies and murder. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what's right? How did you find the courage to stand up to someone powerful? Please share your experiences. And if this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more true accounts of triumph over family darkness. Share this video with someone who needs to know they're not alone in their struggle. Remember, sometimes the family we choose is stronger than the family we're born into, and justice, though it may come slowly, is always worth fighting for. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you always find the strength to serve truth no matter who sits at your table.